Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Gaming Matters, proudly sponsored by our wonderful sponsors this year at Skoga. And we've had a lot of great feedback about the content and the speakers that we've got in this stream this year, and it's due mainly to two people. And one of them is going to be hosting the panel this afternoon. So let's get into it. I know you're very keen to hear what these people have to say. We're talking about streaming and community engagement this afternoon. And to introduce the panel and moderate this afternoon, a newly arrived resident of our great community here at Singapore. Is the BitRep guys, are you still in the crowd? Are you here? Or are they all working? He just told me his team's here, but they're all working. And if they make money, they're okay to miss the panel. Is that correct?
That's right. That's how we
Please make him. He's the CEO of BitRep. Please make him feel welcome, Mr. Rayfield Cockfield III.
Thank you. Really excited to have everyone today. Live streaming is near and dear to my heart. As previous to founding BitRep, I was the head of Asia Pacific for Twitch. And with that, I'll introduce the panel so that they can tell you a little bit about themselves and what current roles they have and why they're up here with me talking about live streaming today. So Ethan, Lee, Warren, and Amy. And we'll start off with Amy.
Okay, hi, I'm Amy. I own the IDNS esports team. We have 8 teams altogether, 6 in Thailand and 2 in Singapore right now, and expanding in Southeast Asia. We have more than 15 international championship awards in my track records. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And Warren?
Awesome. Is this working? Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Warren Colbert here. I work at Twitch. I've been there for about 4.5 years now as a product manager. I've worked on a lot of features at the company, and right now I'm focusing primarily on engagement features, keeping people interacting with Twitch, participating with Twitch as a viewer. I also wanted to call out that this whole Team Solo Mid T-shirt. My buddy over here is the head of FaZe Clan. This was not orchestrated. This is not staged. It just happened that way. It really did just happen that way.
Yeah.
Likely story.
So immediately post on your Twitter feeds and Reddit accounts how Twitch is in battle with FaZe Clan. That should be fun. And Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Trink. I'm actually a music industry refugee. I've actually spoken at the other side of the conference a few times. I was former president of Capitol Records and managed a bunch of global music stars, and been working with and an owner of FaZe Clan for about 3 years. For those of you guys who don't know FaZe Clan, we're in 6 esports. And we do pretty well. We're like #1, #2 in the world in a handful of them. And we've got a social media following of about 125 million combined, do about 200 to 300 million views a month on our YouTube content. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. And finally, Ethan.
Okay, so nice to meet you guys. This is Ethan from WTV. So actually, maybe it's I think everybody here, you just seldom heard about the name WTV. So we're the top gaming streaming platform in China, but it's for us, we're quite newbie to this market. And for me, before I used to stay in the region for over 10 years and stay in the live streaming sector for over 5 years. So today, it's our first time to meet you guys here. So we hope we can explore more chances for any cooperation, no matter content or channels.
Yes. So exciting today because we have both the market leader in China from live streaming and the market leader from the US, as well as one of the biggest esports players and a new entrant into the market. So ignoring the Team Solo Mid incident on stage, I'd like each of you guys to just quickly touch on why is the live streaming audience so important to understand? What's unique about it? What in your experiences that you can share with the folks in the audience could give them just a better idea of how the shift has gone from traditional, more scripted media into now this live streaming, more authentic marketplace. And with that, I'll start, maybe Ethan?
Okay. So actually, if we're talking about live stream audiences, so I would like to use 3 words to describe. It's like young, passionate, and engaging. So according to our data in China, now there are over 81% of the users. They range from 15 to 35. So for these kind of people, they're really like passionate. We used to have Douyu Festival. It's kind of offline festival, and we hold it in our headquarters in Wuhan City. So it's 3 days festival, and it's really hot outside, around 38 degrees. But the people, they can queue 100 meters to wait to chase the streamers. And according to our data, for these 3 days, we have totally around 500,000 people joining us. And finally, we achieved like over 230 million viewership in 3 days. So that's quite a miracle. And talking about engaging, so currently we know now for live streaming, it's not like traditional media, you only have the one-way communication. So for the live streaming, you have the interaction and also your inputs. So that's why we believe for this kind of users, they are really like willing to speak out, they're willing to express themselves. So by this way, for the brands or even for the traditional advertisers, so you can hear more from your audiences. So that's why I think for these audiences, it's really step by step, it play a quite big role in this sector.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's to me that's the main point, and especially I come from a traditional media background where it is one directional. Whatever the content creator aims the content at the user experiences, and that's it. And this is more omnidirectional, and what you have is you have more of an ability for a conversation between the talent and the fan, and you also have a community for the fans to engage with each other. So it's really like it's a totally different ecosystem. It's content consumed in a different way for different reasons. And I think that being part of the community is as important as it is to actually consume the content. And I think it brings people close, it brings the fans closer to the talent because there's that conversation and that relationship. And then it makes the community cohesive because they can communicate with each other and they're there together and they feel that way even digitally. You could, when you're at a concert, you feel community. But here there is a digital community that is, especially for a younger generation, for them identical to being in the same room together.
Excellent. And speaking of community, I'm pretty sure anyone in here would know about the incredible community that Twitch is in the United States. Maybe Warren, dive into that a little bit. Like, what is it that's so special about Twitch? And what makes that community so attached and so passionate?
Yeah, so just adding on to what you were saying, Lee, which I 100% agree with regards to the importance of community. And at Twitch, we really care so much about the community for our streamers, and streamers, when they think about what they do, they're all about building community. They know that that's how they entertain, and that's how they retain the viewers or loyal viewers, is by building that sense of community. And they do lots of different things. Streaming regularly is obviously extremely important. They go to meetup events to meet them. They play games with them. They do things called movie nights, where they'll actually, after their streams, they'll hang out with them and watch movies together, and they'll have like maybe sort of like these kind of virtual voice meetups, where they'll be hanging out, watching movies together. And they're all totally virtual, right? None of this is together. So the community thread is really important. I think also building onto that, because community is so important, monetization changes a lot now from what the monetization for creators were in the past, right? This sort of ad model has changed significantly. a large percentage of our creators, if not most of our creators, make most of their money from not from sort of advertisements, but viewers, just their community giving them money, right, out of their own generosity. When we did surveys with our viewers to ask them why they gave money, why they were giving money to the broadcasters, most of it was just they just wanted to support them. They don't have to do it. You can watch your favorite creator without giving them any money. You can chat in most of the channels without giving them any money. But they're doing it because they know that it's really important for these creators to make money in order for them to keep creating the content. And so I think that that community sense really helps to drive home that this sort of new monetization method that I think is extremely interesting and super important. One of my favorite things about Twitch and other sort of live streaming platforms today is that we're facilitating this flow of revenue. It's a very user-driven sense of revenue, very user-driven. Like no one has to give this money. You want to do it, and so it sort of strengthens the relationship with the creator. And so yeah, that's another thing that I really love.
Excellent. And Amy, can you talk about how esports has maybe helped you and the live audience to grow your audience, the recognition of your team, and how have you interacted with live streaming platforms?
You can engage with the live interaction with the idols, and then that will in itself will form the community. Sometimes the people will come with their friends to talk to the idols during the live stream, and that's why sometimes even though when they form the communities, they will bring in the other one that they met with in the communities, and then it will keep growing larger and larger. And then some of the times you don't even have to communicate with the idol. Sometimes you also come watching and just kind of watching Netflix and gossip about them with your friends on the live stream.
Excellent. And now going back to the platforms, some people, again, they miss on just the size of engagement and what the makeup of the audience is now in live streaming, especially for those more used to traditional media where you think about households. And now we get to actually know who's watching, what their age is, and what they are most interested about. So perhaps Ethan, we'll start with you. What have you seen and what kind of impressive numbers can you throw out for the audience around users, the age groups, how much they maybe spend on DouYu, what is it about live that seems so great and why people need to have strategies for them now?
Okay, so actually for DouYu TV, so we always focusing on the user demands, and we try to use all the ways to satisfy their requirements. So during our operation in China, so currently, we raised the concept of pan-entertainment ecosystem. So we try to build one ecosystem to satisfy all the requirements. So talking about this part, there are 3 points. First one is I want to mention about the content categories. So currently, if people talking about DouYu TV, so it's just like China top game streaming platform. So nowadays we try to bring more and more content in our platforms. For example, like the lifestyle, TV talk shows, even the traditional sports. So by this way, we try to give the user more, to more excitements, and also try to increase, of course, their stickiness to our platforms. Right. So the second point I want to talk about is content generations. Before, for our platform, we signed a lot of teams or streamers, but step by step, we found maybe this way is not sustainable. So that's why. And now, based on our COO, we have one plan. We call it DouYu Star Academy. So we will spend around $150 million to build our own streamers. And by the way, we also look on this industry chain, and we try to invest in some partners like the sports teams or some other MCN in this industry. And the third point, I want to talk about the user engagement. Because I mean, nowadays, so I mean, the user, they engage with us only like online. So we try to give them more experiences. So we bring the idea of we are combining online and offline together for all the users. So that's why from the year 2016, we started our Douyu Festival. Because you know, in China, maybe like every summertime we have the China Joy. In Shanghai, it's really crowded. So the experience is not so good. So that's why from the year 2016, we tried to set our own festival in Wuhan City, in our headquarters. So till now, the result is quite good. As mentioned, like 3 days, we have 500,000 like people that visit us, and also the online viewership in 3 days, it increased it to like over 200 million. So that's why. So this is what we can see is like we are trying to build the pan-entertainment ecosystem. And then we try to bring, creating more values to our gamers and also to the advertisers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. And maybe that's a great time to talk about TwitchCon, which of course was launched a few years ago and is a real example of how platforms reached out offline as well as online. Could you speak a little bit about TwitchCon, and then also, since you're on the product side of things and have to build to this content creator network, how do you satisfy when you're trying to reach out to millions of content creators streaming to millions and millions of people watching?
Sure. So yeah. So TwitchCon. So for those of you that are unaware, we do have a sort of yearly convention to celebrate our creators and their communities. It becomes a really awesome experience where fans can go and hang out and meet with creators, their favorite creators, and they do like signings. You'll often see the creators walking around with their sort of entourages of like 20 or 30 people just sort of following them and hanging out, which is pretty sweet. So yeah, it's a really, really positive experience. People seem to really love it. I've been to every one of them. So there's been 3. We have our 4th one coming up in about a month, I guess now. I think it's about a month and a half now. So yeah, it's been a really amazing experience. I absolutely love it. It's people that I don't get to see. I think when you're a gamer, you sort of get used to hanging out with people on voice servers that you never actually meet in real life. And so when you have these cons where you like get to actually meet these people once a year, it makes it really special. So I think that's one reason why we do it. The community, I think, is probably the biggest reason why we do it. Obviously, also there's a sort of educational element where we have workshops and we present to the streamers, and we allow streamers to sort of present as well. So it's a really great time. To your other question about creating a platform for the insane number of streamers, millions of streamers now. I think one way that we like to think about it, one way that I like to think about it is, even though we have millions of streamers, there's lots of different types of streamers, and the sort of the dynamic for the different streamer communities changes significantly as well. So, for example, if you have a streamer that's streaming to say 20,000 concurrent users, that's a very different experience than a streamer that's streaming to 12 concurrent viewers, right, or 50 concurrent viewers. It's a very different experience. If you're streaming to only 30 people, 50 people, 100 people, those streamers, they're building a community, but it's a very different type of community, right? They might know all the people that subscribe to them by name, right? They might be seeing them or hanging out to them and calling out to them every single time. Every sub that comes in, they're super thankful for that. Not to say that the bigger streamers aren't thankful, but they're able to sort of interact with them in a more intimate way. And I think it just changes the dynamic there significantly. So, for us, when we're for me on the product side, when we're building features for the different audiences, we're thinking, okay, what sort of experience are we building for? Are we building for this experience where, you've got, the Dr. Disrespect or Ninja or Tifu, who's got, huge, tens of thousands of people watching them or 100,000 people watching them. What is that experience that we're building for them? Because not every viewer is going to be able to have a voice. Streamers frequently have, they'll have their sort of chat in subscriber-only mode, so only people that are paying them are able to chat. And frankly, a lot of that's just because, everyone can't chat. If everyone chatted, then, it would be just like a sea of insanity, which our chat often is anyways. Yes. But yeah, so really thinking about, when we're building features for the different creators and different communities, we like to think about like, okay, how do we segment our communities? When we think about building this feature, who is this for? This is for streamers of, with a concurrent a community of, maybe 50 people watching at the same time versus 50,000 people watching at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great segue now, because as I'm looking at it, I know I see some folks that are more on the media side, and I see a significant number of folks that are on the gaming side. So to kind of link those together, I'm going to turn to Lee and just talk about a little bit of your history as well as the development of traditional media and seeing it shift into this new live streaming audience. How do you treat it differently? Understanding the segmentation that Warren just went through, where you're thinking about every single client that interacts with your media. How do you build for that? How do you create a company that can support that type of thing? And where do you see this going in the future?
So I think one of the most important principles that exists now, and it's always existed in some capacity, but authenticity has never reigned more supreme than it does right now. It's, you lie, you die, and when it comes to, back to my background of music, there's like a lag between if you do something and your audience doesn't appreciate it, there's a lag before you actually might recognize it. It might even be a lag and it fades, but the response is in real time. So you've got, my content creators are watching that by the moment, and so they're so acutely attuned to the messaging that they have, whether it resonates, whether it doesn't resonate. And I think that as it relates to, in terms of consumption of media or in advertising, I think what's most critical is really the education of the check writers and the advertisers and the sponsors, that they need to understand that the way they can be most effective in reaching an audience is true collaboration. And it's, and it's the kind of thing where money doesn't triumph all the time, because my guys, it's not a matter of if you come to them with a check, they're ready to support your product. If my guys don't feel like it's on brand, they won't do it, because they have to live. They can, never before have you been able to see in real time what your audience is thinking about what you're doing. So as a result, you have this breed of talent that lives in this ecosystem that is so acutely aware of what their messaging is, and it becomes critical for advertisers to not fight that. They need to participate, and they need to find the right talent that'll fit with their product. Hopefully there is that marriage. Hopefully there is somebody that can, that can support their product, and in an authentic way. But when that marriage exists, it's so much more powerful. It's where, the term influencer is overused, and it's in many ways derogatory. At least that's the way it comes off in the US at this point. But it's that influence is genuine, but that influence needs to be wielded with authenticity, with respect for the fan base. And I would say, in working with talent for my whole career, any talent that did well, any talent that was big, always respected their audience, respected their core, but because of being able to read them by the second, that there's no slack in that system, and as a result, the talent is held much more accountable, and therefore that means the advertisers are also held that much more accountable.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, for anyone who's looking to now invest in this and start to build brand around this and reach a younger audience, You Lie, You Die is a great way to think about how you build brand and how you build your image, in this new live streaming audience. So shifting gears a little bit, because I think it's a hot topic that's been a hot topic now for a couple of years, but we'll turn to Amy with, well, what about this esports thing? Like, why and how do you invest into an esports team, or how should you think about investing in esports?
Because the market is growing by a lot every year. Actually, it's by quarter by quarter. Before I got into esports industry, I was CEO of the fund management securities of the oldest bank in Thailand.
Wow.
And then I just retired, and then I just opened a company called Chimera for investment purpose, and then I just started to invest in the esports because I want to give the equal opportunity to players, but then on the other hand, being the investor. So of course I want some returns as well.
Yeah.
So I want the what's good side of the world. And so I invested in esports because there's so many channels of money that you can make, like streaming, advertising, sponsorships, and then events, and then you can also branch out to merchandise and then products and commercials, something like that.
Great. And I'm going to jump back to you again, Lee. A reminder for the audience, what is the reach of FaZe Clan again, and what are the channels that you primarily use to hit that audience?
Well, our combined social is around 125 million. Just our YouTube content alone, we do 200 to 300 million views a month just on that content. Obviously, then add the tens of millions of streaming content on Twitch, and then really on all the socials. I mean, we have an unusual organization in that there's two sides of it, right? There's the esports side and the pro gamers, and then the content guys who also operate under the FaZe Clan banner, and they all really operate as one brand. They consider themselves, one family, but they have really two different roles that, from a standpoint of being able to reach a tremendous amount of people in a powerful way, that combination of esports pro gameplay plus content creation and influence is a deadly combination for us.
Yeah, so I mean, think about that also as you're trying to reach product. Like, you've got leaders from the different streaming platforms up here talking about the way to engage, authenticity. You lie, you die. And that can be intimidating to a traditional business. But in reality, this is an opportunity. You probably get to deploy more capital in a smarter way to reach a bigger audience through this type of medium than you would have traditionally.
It's a challenge for CMOs. I mean, really, it's, and I don't slag CMOs any differently than any other media executive, because oddly enough, most media executives, although they're meant to be on the bleeding edge, are not. They tend to stay in their lane. They stay with what they know. The same goes for my past business of music, is you tend to stick with what you know. And CMOs are in this very difficult changeover right now, where where there's the media dollars have been spent in many of the traditional ways that are all waning. And then you have this new incredibly explosive area that is really foreign. The way the fan base behaves is foreign. The way the marketing needs to be done is foreign. And it's a challenge because the you lie, you die, tenant is, the burden on a CMO is harder. You have to be more cautious and more judicious about who you partner with. But when you do find them, it's so much more powerful for your brand.
Yeah. And and Warren, we were talking about this earlier, the authenticity problem with creators and losing control over the content that is being made around your brand. Can you speak a little bit to that challenge? And
I don't know where it's going.
Yeah. Yes. Mine's
Yeah, sorry about that. Feedback. Yeah, so I think what's interesting here, feeding off of what you said, I think is especially scary for the big brands. For smaller brands, there's obviously less to lose, right? So when you're a bigger brand, you've got a lot to lose, and you do have to be considerate of what potential what's the downside, right, for being out there with these influencers, because they are going to be honest. They have to be honest with their communities. If they're not, they're going to lose their communities, and so you have to know that that's the case. One of the I think a job that's hard for us is making sure that we build a platform that is going to be safe for people to talk about the brand, and we're always thinking about abuse vectors on our product, right? Because whenever a brand is launched, whether it's we've had incidents with emotes, like brands that have launched emotes. Since we're literally like producing language, right? So when we create a new badge or new emotes on the platform, this is now a new way that users can use to communicate with. And so whenever you add to language, they can manipulate that language in really negative ways that could harm brands. So it is a really scary place for CMOs and folks out there, and we're working hard to try to make it safer for folks, but whenever you sort of expand the sort of lexicon and expand the dictionary and expand the different ways people can express themselves about brands, it's going to open up new and interesting abuse vectors that's super tough to deal with. But to your previous point, I think at this point it's kind of out there. The cat's out of the bag. If you're not engaged with the audience, if you're not being, if you're not being participating in this, then you're really just you're going to lose out. And so I think
you're about to be late, right? There's sort of this window right now where you can be early, but that's going to convert quickly into being late. And I think that there is a tremendous reward for brands who are willing to do the work in order to really try and understand this and to partner with the right people. Especially a big brand could really create such a footprint for themselves, but you still see that people are just kind of pussyfooting around.
Yeah, and diving in is something that I think is important, and you made a great point, which is finding the right people. Yeah. And the key is, as opposed to, I think, a lot of traditional businesses and the traditional business environment, Twitch, esports teams, they're here to help. They want to engage with you. They'll explain what type of audience they have. They understand it better, I think, than maybe even some of the older media audiences did. Not to insult the ones that are in the room right now, of course we love you. But shifting a little bit just to make sure the audience gets all the useful information that they could. We're in Asia right now, so I'm gonna kick it back to Ethan. Yep. You've heard a lot about, again, the global audience, which of course is a little bit different than the Chinese audience. How would you translate or change any of the messaging that's been said today when companies are looking at addressing the Chinese market and working with Douyu?
Oh, actually, if talking about China market, actually it's quite open, but you really need the local wisdom to enter into this market, because talking about the game viewers in China, their habits are quite different from the region or even from the Western side. So let's take one example. So in our app, we developed one function, we call it bullet screen. It's kind of flying message in the screen. Because normally, like in Twitch or in other platforms, when the viewer, you are watching some tournament, you don't want to be disturbed. Yeah. But in China, the people, they just keep sending this kind of message to show their opinions, so they are willing to express their ideas. So by this way, we charge like normally 10 cents, for one message. But like for this year, when we made the LOL Asia tournament, so for one match, there are over 1 million people that are sending the bullet message. And during this match, totally we got like over 3.5 million messages. So that's why I think that, in China market, their user behaviors are quite different from the region. So that's why, I mean, if you want to enter into China market, you really need to find the local Western and need to, I mean, before you go, you better have a serious study regarding the local market there.
Great. And Amy, maybe if you can add just a little bit on top of that, what have you seen or experienced in Thailand or Southeast Asia, especially as you're working with more brands, about how you need to educate them or talk to them to make sure they understand how to operate?
First of all, I would like them to at first stop giving away like the freebies during the stream, because it does not work and it does not engage the real life or long-term community. Then what you get is you get like certain very few group of people just flood the whole screen, like give me the code, give me the code, give me the code, okay, and not paying attention to anything. And after they get what they want, they just never come back. So you don't want any of that kind of audience.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. To a lot of brands, they sometimes worry about the monetization or the money that's coming through the live streaming audience, especially as it pertains to gaming. But what's coming through a lot more now is the value of these users, the value of that time. So it's important not to always just think free. This is not a splash social media type of activation. This is real engagement with your core community and the people that will be buying your brands. So always focus on when you're activating on live streaming audiences, YouTube, Facebook, Douyu, Huya, et cetera, that you're thinking about that. What is it that I'm trying to get out of this, and how am I trying to interact with my audience? How can I take advantage of all this added time that I get to interact with my audience? It's no longer a 1-minute clip where I have to tell them everything and pray that they come back. Shock may or may not work. It's now thinking more about your client as a whole and how to treat them. So with that, can each of you share a little bit of just what you've learned over the last couple of years and how you've seen the market develop and mature, and where do you think the market is going to be in the next 2 to 3 years?
Okay, so actually I see esports is really playing quite important role in the society. So actually we can say like Alan from AirAsia, today he's here. And also this morning session, I also joined the session. Like I saw like Sintel, they also invested a lot in the esports. So that's why we can see now everybody, they don't want to be left behind. And during some, our research, we can see like for the worldwide viewers, it's mentioned like it could be like around 380 million viewers. So that's where we can see it's a really huge population. And for these kind of like audiences, and as I mentioned, so in the region we also can see their age quite young, like from 15 to 35. So for this kind of people, we used to have some online survey, and we can see these kind of people, they are really able and willing to spend. So that's why I think this is one segment that brands or advertisers you cannot miss.
Great.
So what I've come to believe over my last few years understanding the space is, I look at a brand, a gaming org like FaZe Clan that has the potential to be bigger than any other existing sports brand, because the Yankees only play baseball, the Patriots only play football, FC Barcelona only plays football.
Say it right.
And FaZe Clan or Team Solomon can play as many esports as they'd like to play. And I see a point in the not too distant future, whether that's 3 years or 5 years, where esports consumption is greater than half of all sports consumption in the world.
Wow.
And I could see FaZe Clan at some point being in tens or even 100 different games. And maybe there are huge games like we're in, like Call of Duty or Counter-Strike or PUBG, or there are small games, niche games, and that all of those games will be supported economically, and they'll be supported by communities. So I think that we are really at the very, very beginning of a long and big road, and in creating enormous brands that can stand the test of time.
Great.
So one thing that I think I've learned a ton about is just the sheer amount of sort of organic revenue that the creators can make. And I think in terms of where this is all heading, I think that creators right now are still contributing far more economic value than they're making.
Yep.
I think we're getting better. Like we're seeing a lot of streamers now making more money, which I think is fantastic. But in terms of the amount of value that they add to the game developers, the amount of value that they add to the different brands, the gaming hardware they're using, any lifestyle products that they're using, the exposure that they're giving brands is just incredible, and they're not getting paid for it. And I think this is an area that we have a lot of room to develop on, and I think this is an area that's going to grow significantly. I think influencers are going to be, if not the biggest and most effective ways to advertise, I think they will be the most effective ways to advertise, frankly, and I think they will get paid for it. And that's something that's going to happen in the future. So I think the amount of creators that are making living wages are going to increase significantly because they're going to get paid for it, and they're going to make a lot more.
That's great. And as the owner of a company that represents him, gosh, I hope so. With the final word, Amy.
Okay. As for I agree with Ethan, Lee, and Warren about all that, and I just like to add on, like, since this is just the beginning of the first wave. So if you're doing the right kind of commercial or marketing, it will stick with the brand as a household name. The moment they think about the product, so think about this particular brand, just like Facebook when it started, or Alibaba when it's just beginning.
That's great. A round of applause for our panel. I hope you learned a lot today. Please feel free to find them around the venue. Ethan from DouYu, Lee from FaZe Clan, Warren from Twitch, and Amy just forgot your esports team. Excellent. From the Thailand esports world. So thank you. Please stay seated. We have another great panel coming up. And thank you again, guys.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.